Hello and welcome to Pathways of Sensory Awareness. My name is Stefan Langilliet and I'd like to explore the question, what is sensory awareness today? By popular demand, I will talk about sensory awareness as a mindfulness practice, which it really has been for almost 100 years, though the term has not until recently been part of the vocabulary of sensory awareness. Very simply put, we could say sensory awareness is a call to collaborate. The practice of sensory awareness is about cultivating a way of living which is in touch with and responsive to the demands of the moment. It is about the relational quality of our actions. It is about how we are with what is, including, of course, ourselves. In recent years, mindfulness practices have received much attention, and the growing scientific evidence of the benefits of living in the present moment has resulted in it being applied in an astonishing array of settings. But what is this moment in which we are to be present, and why is it important to be present? Well, because this is where the action is. We are never simply present. We are always present with something, for something. And presence always means action, interaction, and hopefully collaboration. Even if we just sit there in silence and practice what we may call meditation or mindfulness, it always happens within a context of things which also present themselves. What we call moment is not neutral territory, is not empty space, but it is what is happening in that space. The word moment has its origins in momentum, which in turn derives from movere, to move. What we call the present moment then is movement. It is a process rather than a unit of time. It is feeling ourselves and others, hearing, tasting, etc. It is interaction, contact, a process of call and response, if you will. Moments are encounters with other lives, with things, with people. Moments are happenings. So the question arises, what is called for in this people and things moment? What does the situation I find myself in ask for, and how can I respond most skillfully? What gets in the way of successful interaction between me and other beings, other things taking part in that situation? In my case, for example, right now, the interaction with the cushion under me and the floor. These questions stand at the beginning of an inquiry into and the cultivation of our actions, our conduct. Sensory awareness as an experiential practice does not attempt to answer these questions philosophically or intellectually, though there's a place for that too, for sure. It explores them through direct experience and wakeful presence mainly, through sensory exploration. True to its origins, which lie in the physical culture movement of the early 20th century, sensory awareness uses a somatic approach to tackle these questions. But unlike most somatic practices, and for that matter most mindfulness practices, it does not offer a body of set exercises, movements, or postures. This gives us the freedom to spontaneously invent or modify an assignment, the freedom to improvise according to the needs of a student or a group, which is really what happens in life too. There's not one answer that fits all. And that's the beauty and also the challenge of sensory awareness. We have to find the appropriate form ongoingly. It is through such careful and often playful exploration, through focused awareness, that we regain a deeply felt and interactive connection with the real. In sensory awareness workshops, we're always interested in how we do what we do. And though we may propose a clearly defined task, which might look like an exercise, a form. The aim is not to replicate this form. One form may be useful in one situation, but it may become a hindrance in another. We practice sensory awareness to become ready to fully meet life as it is, not to master a method. Sensory awareness is about letting go of constraints, about shedding what gets in the way of accomplishing what we have set out to do. It's about being at home in ourselves and in our environment based on real connection. Sensory awareness is based in our experience as an organism within its environment, to borrow a term from Krzyzewski's general semantics. It is largely a non-verbal practice, though. By sharing our experience with one another, we occasionally do turn our attention to how we express ourselves in words. Language is such a crucial form of communication for humans, and it too, quite obviously, needs to be cultivated. In class, we present the students with ordinary, if somewhat stylized and maybe seemingly out of context tasks, for example, coming from sitting to standing, for which the how-to is not prescribed, but which the students is encouraged to discover through sensory awareness, that is, through conscious experiencing and a responsive presence to the contributions of the other presences involved. Again, for example, the seat under me. What do I mean by other presences? Every action is interaction because there's always another which takes part. This other may be the chair I use for sitting, the ground on which I stand, the air I breathe, the cup I bring to my lips, an instrument, a person. Everything, every body present, including me, has its part in a task. It is together that we accomplish it. Even if the task is as simple as sitting here, do I acknowledge, do I notice the presence of floor under me, of cushion? It may be that the quality of my presence for that which is under me is going to affect the quality of my sitting and maybe even of my speaking. For the sake of exploring some of the basic principles that guide our lives, it is useful to tease out strands from the complex web of interactions and focus on certain elements of an event, or to intentionally change the habitual way of doing something. For that, we create what we call experiments or explorations in sensory awareness. In my classes, I work a lot with walking as something relatively simple. It lends itself beautifully to exploring basic principles of living. We might experiment with coming from sitting to walking with different speeds, with walking backwards or sideways or turns, etc. Doing this, we may realize, for example, that every action is interaction. We do not walk on our own. There needs to be something to walk on, a ground. Can we feel it? While a living creature's contribution to walking is the complex activity of moving of limbs, balancing, and so forth, the ground's contribution, among others, is that it provides stability and traction for those movements. Then there is what we call gravity, the Earth's powerful force of attraction. One of its contributions is that it pulls us onto the ground upon which we can then move. Very simply put, the forces at work in walking are the Earth's pull of gravity, the ground on which we walk, the air which surrounds us and which we breathe, and what we call I, this living organism with its vitality, its physiology, its intentions, etc. All of these interacting with each other. It's very complex and beautiful. If all this seems complicated and difficult to grasp, it really is not. It's not in order to figure things out that we practice walking. but rather in order to settle into the activity, to be at home in it, and to be connected and effective. When we are firmly grounded in these organismic processes, we gain a certain inner freedom because we begin to realize, not as an intellectual insight, but in the deeper sense of the word realize, to make real, to embody, that it is not by thinking alone that we solve problems. Untamed thinking, in fact, often gets in the way of clarity. The thinking mind, the intellect, is in a Buddhist understanding but one of 6 senses. It is but one of the ways with which we interact with and make sense of the world. When thinking is not firmly grounded in sensory experience, it tends to spin out of control and creates a virtual world so convincing it is easily mistaken for reality. The resulting beliefs, ideas, assumptions then get in the way of experiencing of meaningful evaluation and response. Many of today's worst conflicts, as you know, result from such beliefs. Disconnected thinking overpowers the other senses, especially the one that gives us a grounded sense of belonging, of self. The awareness of bodily sensations, or better, proprioception, which literally means a sense of one's own, that is the ability to feel ourselves, and its companions, kinesthesia, the sense of movement and position, and tactile sensations, the sense of touch. The quieting of mental chatter is both a result of cultivating such sensory awareness and a prerequisite for the deepening of that awareness. A quiet mind, in turn, will lead to more clarity in thinking, and its conclusions can then be of true value to our lives. Sensory awareness is a process of awakening, a process of embodiment, if you will. It is a contemplative practice to a degree. We need those times of retreat and renewal. We need those moments of not doing, of recreation. The world needs them, but they are not an end in themselves. Practice in sensory awareness is like being a gardener who prunes an apple tree so that it may bear better fruit. Through sensory awareness, we prune away that which is not needed, and we give room to that which is, so that we may become responsive participants in a complex world which calls for our attention. This takes a lot of experience, it takes a lot of skill, a lot of patience, which is hopefully fueled by that childlike joy in discovery which children have and which we may rediscover. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.